Hello, guys. Welcome back to this episode of OceanViews. We are joined by Ethan. Ethan, thank you so much for giving us some of your time in your, I'm sure, busy schedule to have a chat with us. But could you please introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure thing. So I'm Ethan Hrnjak. I'm standing as the Greens candidate for Mackellar, which is on Garigal land and is home to the Hrnjak clan. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that this land was never ceded and that it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So I'm 18 and I'll be studying environmental law and management at Macquarie this year. I'm an organizer with the School Strike for Climate movement, and I do marshalling at their strikes. I represent the local council ward in the council's youth advisory group. So basically just advocating for the well-being of young people in my local area, which I find incredibly rewarding. Sort of just stuff like outreach, mental health advocacy and all of that. Which of course are very big passions of mine and of the Greens.
Yeah, that's such a broad range of things. So it's really cool that you're involved in so many things. So how did you first get involved in politics and environmental activism?
So I joined the Greens in January or early February last year, and I attended my first meeting, which was a Young Greens meeting. And I ended up leaving that meeting, being roped into being the local candidate for the council elections, which were held last year. So that was around eight-ish months of campaigning because they were postponed due to COVID. So I really got a taste for campaigning and Greens issues, but I also had a real, I guess, education about the environment and the issues that we're facing. And that's what really compelled me to, join the School Strike for Climate movement and start doing environmental protests and activism. So I guess joining the Greens was my first introduction to it, which is normally something that comes a bit later, but I think I just sort of jumped right into the deep end.
Sounds amazing. And honestly, I've never met another young person so heavily involved in politics, which I find so admirable because politics to me is so intimidating. Very scared of it, but I'm eager to learn. So hopefully this conversation will tell me a bit more about it. But I'm interested. So you said you were in university. How do you balance your, politics work and also university?
So I actually don't start university until July, but to answer your question, I guess, so I did the council campaign while I was doing my HSE. So initially the election was supposed to be held in September. So I thought I'd have bit of leeway to be able to study, but then it got postponed until December 4th. So right up until the HSC, I was out campaigning and then coming home to study and then waking up the next day to go to school. And I guess that really wasn't great for me, to be honest. It's very difficult for young people to get involved with politics because we've got so many commitments and there's just a lot of workload that we face. And I think what really helped me was that our local Greens group was incredibly supportive of me, and they helped me with a lot of stuff and helped to take a lot of the pressure off me. And I definitely could have done it without them. So I think to answer your question, the best possible thing that a young person who's interested in politics could do is try and surround themselves with a really great network of people who can support you when it really gets difficult.
I think that's so inspiring that you had so many commitments and you still found time to be involved in all your work. And like you said, being surrounded by supportive people is definitely key in helping maintain that balance. And just going on from that, is there anyone or anything that inspires you?
There is. So their name is Chloe Swarbrick, and they're a Greens MP in New Zealand. I think she's 27, the last time I checked, but she led an incredible grassroots campaign in the seat of Auckland Central, which is a very urban seat, sort of like Melbourne. But she's done some fantastic work advocating for young people because over there housing is equally, if not more difficult for young people to access. She's also done great work with drug reform and with the environment, of course. Luckily, New Zealand is a bit more progressive when it comes to environmental protection than we are. But of course, that's due to the great work of Greens MPs like her. So she definitely inspires me. I'm a massive fan. But yeah, I definitely ask you to just check her out on Instagram. She's really, really adept, and she's very hip with the young people.
I love hearing about, I'm not saying she's old, but older young people supporting young people, and just it makes a much easier job for younger people when older people that have more credentials are kind of paving the way for us. So I definitely agree that she's definitely someone who is very inspiring, not only to you, but hopefully for everyone in the future as well with her work. Do you have any current or upcoming projects you'd like to share with us?
I guess I can talk about a local project that we're doing. It's not really relevant outside of my electorate, but I guess it's sort of applicable to sort of different environmental issues that we're witnessing around the country and the state. So we've got a state-owned road, which is a 2-lane road that goes right through the bush. And basically, when it was first built, they put it in the wrong spot, and now it floods frequently a couple times every year. And unfortunately, that road is one of only two 2-lane roads that actually get you to the major hospital on the northern beaches. So when that floods, it makes it almost impossible to be able to get to the hospital on time. And ever since they shut down the other hospital on the other end, anyone who can't access it is in a really difficult position, which is quite unfortunate. So basically, the state government handed responsibility of that road to the local council to fix. And in reality, it's not something that the local council can fix because it's a massive state-owned road, and it would cost billions of dollars to properly fix. So the council's solution is to move the road and raise it in some places. But that also involves cutting down around 2,000 trees, which is the size of a small forest. And also just has an incredible impact on the local sedimentation because it's on the edge of a lagoon, a freshwater and saltwater lagoon. And basically tomorrow morning, I'll be joined with David Shoebridge, who's the Greens Senator for New South Wales and just resigned after 10 years in the New South Wales Parliament to be able to stand for the Senate. And we'll just basically be putting forward a different solution where we'd raise the road completely, which would stop the flooding, because basically the solution that councillors put forward will reduce it, but it's still going to happen. And it's really just a band-aid solution that our generation will have to deal with in the next 20, 30 years. But of course, that type of forward thinking isn't really considered by our politicians because unfortunately, a lot of their forward strategies are just to the next election or to the next 3 years. So when it comes to us as young people, we're really just being left behind and we'll be saddled with this incredible debt, not only with climate change, but there's also a massive economic debt of decades of economic mismanagement. We'll be inheriting all of these sort of poor planning issues across the country. And I mean, there's really no way we'll be able to pay for it on top of everything else. So we've really got to be able to stand up for ourselves and say, this hasn't been right. This isn't right. And, young people just can't be left to deal with all of this on top of everything else we already have. But that's just one example of how state and federal governments have really failed when it comes to forward planning. And I think that's a really big thing that young people need to be able to speak to because it's something that's going to impact us very intimately.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you there. Yeah, the fact that we have to inherit so much economic mismanagement is definitely a burden on top of everything else. And I think it's really inspiring that that's something you're focusing on, and especially specifically for this example, like ensuring everyone has access to that healthcare. So it's just, yeah, it's amazing to see. On to the next question. You've mentioned this a bit before, saying how like elections were pushed back into December, which is definitely a difficult thing. But with COVID forcing us to change our approach, how has this like affected your work in general?
Well, I guess in an electoral sense, it's not as difficult as it was last year for the council elections. But what COVID's really done when it comes to voting is it's increased the uptake of mail-in ballots, which means that you're not talking to voters on election day as they walk into the polling booth. You're not able to hand them anything unless you pay an incredible amount to have them letterboxed directly. So I guess COVID's really had to make us rethink our strategy about being able to get the word out there and our policies and our candidates out there. So what we've done is we've put more of a focus on social media advertising, because in reality, the strongest Greens vote comes from the 18 to 30 crowd. And of course, they're very prolific on social media. So that's been working quite well for us. But otherwise, I guess, campaigning such as door knocking isn't something that we can really do as much as we normally would, just because people are understandably still worried about COVID right now, because case numbers are still incredible. But yeah, it's just that loss of face-to-face campaigning, which has proven to be the most effective form of converting someone to vote for you. So it's definitely made us think outside the box, which I think is a good thing, because it's great to have a lot of tools up your sleeve to be able to convert votes and to be able to talk to people about local issues. So I guess that's what's impacted our work the most, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you said, everything's really going online, a bigger focus on social media also, but it's a good thing because social media is a very powerful tool. So kind of a win and a lose situation. But our next question, which is kind of a flip. So we just talked about COVID being kind of a drag, but have there been any favorite opportunities that you'd like to share with us?
I guess there's two that really stand out to me. The first one would be participating in the School Strike for Climate a few months ago. Of course, that was just an incredible experience for me to see so many other young people incredibly passionate about our future and actually fighting for what we need to see when it comes to legislation regarding climate change and First Nations justice, and just addressing the basic inequality that young people are facing. And I think that was just really inspiring to me. And every time I see protests like that, it really just gives me that extra boost to keep on fighting, which is why I ended up joining them as an organizer. It's so great to be a part of that crowd because they're just so positive, and they're so passionate. It's really great to see. And the other one would be getting to launch my campaign next to Adam Bandt, who is the leader of the Australian Greens and the MP for Melbourne. I'm just a massive fan of him and all of the work that he's done. So it was really great to be able to stand next to him and talk about our plan for the future.
That's so cool that you're now alongside people that you used to admire. Hopefully one day we can all, rise up to your level as well. And also with what you were saying before about School Strike for Climate, I think seeing other young people be involved with you is definitely something that motivates us as well to stay involved, seeing that so many other people are passionate about it. And yeah, it's always good to have that support from others. Yeah, just continuing on, as a young person in politics and environmental conservation, what have been some challenges you've faced and how did you overcome them?
I guess the biggest one that I can really think of would be, obviously the Greens are quite progressive. So when it comes to talking to voters in an incredibly conservative electorate, which is where I'm in, where 70% of people give their first preference to the Liberals. Obviously, you don't get a positive response every time. So I guess it's really taught me to respect other people's political views. And it's also taught me to hear people out and really try and understand what drives their political decision-making. And I think that what it's taught me is that if you can really connect with someone and discuss what motivates them, why they believe in a certain party, why they believe in a certain ideology, it makes it a lot easier to be able to talk freely about different policies and talk about the future and which parties are doing what, because what you've got to do is be able to respect their political views. You can't go into it trying to change them. You've just got to go into it trying to have a conversation about it, because in the end, it's just two people who are incredibly passionate about their political views, and while they might not be the same views, they're equally as relevant and they're equally as valid. They're equally as valid, and I guess that's what I've really learnt. I've had doors slammed in my face. I've had abuse yelled out from cars driving past, all of that good stuff. But I guess it's really just made me stronger. And it's just given me a lot of resilience, which is something that you really need in politics, unfortunately, because it's still a very, very dirty business. Even though, of course, myself and the Greens, we're just really trying to envision a better world and a better future.
Yeah, I admire you for saying that, because it's definitely, even though we think we're doing what's definitely right, having a safe environment, isn't that just part of our rights as young people to want to live in a safe future? But other people have different agendas and different goals, as you said, and so it is really important to understand their point of view. And also, I've been trying to understand economics and how there can be, an economic side to climate change policies, because it's not just like, okay, we're just going to change 100% to renewables. It's not that simple. And I get that, but I'm trying to understand why. And so I really understand what you're saying with the two sides of the argument. This is our last question, unfortunately, but I think it's one of the most important. In your opinion, how powerful do you believe the voices of young changemakers are, and what advice would you give them?
I think that we're in an incredibly we're in an incredible position right now in history. I mean, the AEC reported the other day the record number of enrollments the day before the roll closed. And this election, we've got 600,000 young people who'll be voting for the first time. And that's 600,000 people who are going to be voting for the future, for climate action, for addressing the inequality crisis, the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis. And I think that every year, more and more young people are voting. They're seeing what's happening around them. They're seeing all of this on their social media, in their communities, and they're becoming radicalized, because what's happened is our two-party system has just continued as business as usual. And what we've had is almost 10 years of a Liberal government who's had no vision, and they've actively made our lives worse. And I think what that's done is it's not only contributed to young people's anxiety about their future, but it's also made it incredibly difficult to engage with politics, because for them, it just doesn't seem to work. And that's exactly how they like it. Because if they think that we've got this incredible power over them, they'd be running for the hills. But that's the truth. We've got this massive movement of young people, thousands of us in the streets fighting for a better future. And I think that, yeah, we're an incredibly strong group of people. And I mean, what really fascinates me is that our generation have grown up with social media, one of the first to do so. And what I found is that when you don't have the same one or two newspapers that are giving you your political information, you actually get quite a large array of political views, because they just can't be enforced by the media and the major parties like they used to. And I think that there's a growing shift in politics where, the market-oriented rhetoric of the major parties just isn't cutting through anymore. And I think that we're absolutely primed for change. And I think it's young people who are going to be able to drive that change. So the advice that I'd give to young people is to first get out and vote. Vote for what you believe in, for a candidate who's willing to fight for us and fight for our future. And the other advice I'd give young people is to get involved in your local community. So it could be something like joining a local community garden and just trying to build a network of people and a network of close friends who you'd be able to rely on if it really hits the fan, to be frank. But yeah, by building resilient communities, that's how we'll really be able to move forward And I think that if you're able to vote, if you're able to get involved with your local community and build those networks, it really sets us up for a positive future. Because I think what young people are really, really able to do is envision a fairer world. And I think that if we just let these old fogies try and explain it for us, it's just not going to happen the way it needs to. So young people, get out involved, vote, get involved, and don't listen to anyone else, because you know, we're fighting for what we need to see.
That was a lovely ending, and I agree with every single thing that you said. It's very well said, by the way. But I definitely agree that young people have so much power, and it really is about harnessing it and using what we have, the tools that we have, you know, for example, voting, at our disposal to do our best to create a safe future for ourselves. So amazingly said. Thank you so much for this interview. I enjoyed every bit of it. I'm sure Gloria did as well. Unfortunately, it is the end. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.